Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics! Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Ever wonder where dreams come from? Ever fear the implications that nightmares might bring? Find out what awaits you in the void with the continuation of Doughboy420's Dreamscape Part 3, The Things in Our Dreams.
I had been drawn in by a book bound in flesh. I had been drawn in by the madness within its pages, and now the madness was creeping into me, into my mind, into my soul. I was entranced by the book, enticed by it. I saw the creature there, the prisoner on the stone. He begged for me, he pleaded. His madness was becoming my madness. Why? I was able to pull myself away from the book, and again, I was exhausted. The book was draining my soul. The book was drawing my life into itself. I was terrified of what was happening, but I could do nothing. I slipped into unconsciousness. I fell here. I fell to the dreamscape. I awoke to find myself within a room that was not the one I had passed out in. Instead, I was in a room that was at first completely foreign to me. Am I in the same house? I asked myself. How did I get here? I asked further. It was upon further examination that I realized where I was. I was in the child's room. The room with the clowns painted on the walls, and the rocking horse in the middle of the room. But now, the room was different. The room was fresh and new. It appeared bright and colorful, as if the room had just been painted yesterday. The clowns were no longer cracked and faded. Instead, they were bright and joyful, performing various stunts around the room, balancing on barrels, riding tiny bicycles, floating away, holding balloons. The room was different. It even felt different. It felt joyful. I turned to see the rocking horse sitting in the room. It too was like new. It was painted white with brown eyes. It had new, properly groomed, almost golden hair coming from its mane and tail, and its missing leg was now intact. The room was different now. It was peaceful. I didn't feel that fear in it that I had felt before. It was peaceful now, and I was able to find a brief moment of respite. I knew the room was not supposed to be like this. It had rotted away, and I had torn out and gutted it. It was supposed to be nothing but studs in the walls and the floor. I knew something was wrong here in my head, but in my heart, I felt at peace. I felt like this was where I was supposed to be. I suddenly snapped myself away from this dream. I had again become hypnotized. The room was not supposed to be this way. I was not supposed to be here. I was not supposed to be in this room. How did I get here? I ran for the door and gripped its bronze-colored handle. I whipped the door open and stopped. I didn't see the hallway before me. I didn't see anything. It was darkness. I stood in the doorway. gazing into complete darkness. It was as if I was standing at the edge of the abyss. Absolute nothingness. I turned away from the terrifying darkness and peered back into the room. The room began to change. The clowns began to cry blood, a crimson red flowing down their faces. They began to move, dancing and playing about the walls, their blood creating obscene designs upon the walls. They danced around the walls of the room, playing and skipping, doing cartwheels and jumping jacks, all the while their faces turning more dark, more sinister, more evil. They changed from happy clowns to a twisted visage of their original selves. They continued to cry tears of blood which trickled and sprayed down the walls, forming the same images and letters found within the pages of the book. It was then that I felt hands around me, gripping onto my shoulders and embracing my waist, holding tightly to my wrists and wrapping strongly around my legs. I was terrified and shocked as I was pulled violently backwards into the darkness. I was pulled away swiftly from the light of the room. I watched as the rectangle of the doorway became smaller and smaller, so small, so far away, that it became a square. Then, further I was pulled away. The square of the door became a tiny circle, and then it was but a pinpoint of light. Then, nothing. Nothing but darkness. Nothing but the tightly binding hands gripping my body. The invisible hands holding me tightly, pulling me ever backwards. I only knew I was still being pulled backwards because I could feel the wind against me, blowing my hair and clothing forward, the wind blowing in my ears, booming against my eardrums, louder and louder. Then, suddenly, all was silent, and I felt a weightlessness. I no longer felt the hands upon me, and it was as if I was floating in space, drifting in an endless void of absolute darkness. Alone. Completely alone in the empty blackness. I then felt my back press gently against a wall, which shocked me for an instant, and then I turned. I turned to see a wall. A hallway with a door at the end of it. A hallway with a door floating in nothing. To my right was a door, and to my left was a cliff of absolute nothingness. I chose the door. I crawled in the weightlessness, clawing at the wall to pull myself along it. I kicked and pulled myself along the wall to the door, clawing along the pale blue hallway toward a bright white door. I reached out for its handle, and it flung open. The door opened to a place foreign to any belief or reason. The world itself consisted of a vast array of colors, like the inside of a rainbow. It was as if I was seeing every color of the spectrum, even those unable to be seen by the human eye. I was seeing colors for the first time, colors I'd never witnessed. My mind was in overdrive, and I could feel myself experiencing a sensory overload. It was then that I noticed not just the world's environment was colorful, but the color itself appeared to just float in the air like mist that never moved. It appeared like gasoline floating in a puddle. Yet, even when you swiped your hand through it, it would not move. It just hung there in space, in suspended animation. The world was a beautiful place. It was amazing, and I found myself in awe of it even being possible. I was dreaming. I had to be. This place was too wondrous to exist. It was then that I seen them. The bubbles of mist floating about. They were like the other mist, with the gasoline and the puddle-type color, but these had more shape to them. They were shaped like spheres, like bubbles. They could also move about, seemingly at will, unlike the other stationary mist. I looked within one of them as it approached me. I peered into it and seen that it contained an image of a young boy playing in a playground. It passed by me. I saw another approach me, and within it, I saw a man sitting happily on the beach, the sunshine beating down upon him. I felt a peacefulness emanating from these bubbles. It was then that I seen them, the things from my dreams, the things that should not be. Their black, amorphous bodies floated through the air, chasing and grabbing a hold of the bubbles with their tentacles and arms. They attached themselves to the dream spheres and appeared to feed upon their contents. As the creatures fed upon the bubbles, the orbs of dreams began to change color. They turned from a rainbow soap bubble color to a misty gray, like a light smoke trapped within a bubble. I watched a particular shadow thing as it attached itself to a bubble, and it changed it. The creature then detached itself from the bubble and pushed itself away, sending the rainbow orb my way. The sphere approached me, and I stepped aside, letting it pass. Within it, I seen an array of images, horrifying images. Images of people being chased by masked murderers. Images of people being fed to monsters. The dreams had been transformed into nightmares. These creatures, these shadow things, they were creating nightmares. They were the source of nightmares. These things fed upon the happiness within dreams and left their waste. A dream twisted by them to create a nightmare. What are these things? I thought. Where am I? I continued, thinking one thought after another, my mind racing. I passed the creatures by, and they appeared not to notice me at all. Was I invisible to them? Or did they not care? It was then that I noticed where I was. I was in familiar territory. This road I was walking along was the road to the house where this all started. I was walking down a twisted version of the same road, and surely a twisted version of the same house would lie at the end of it. I followed the road, the colorful, twisting road, colors hanging in the air, monsters, things that should not be, lurking within the forests on either side. The bubbles of dreams and nightmares floating between the trees. What is this? I found myself thinking again. Is this a dream, or am I in the same world? Am I seeing the same world from a different perspective? What's going on? What's happening? Is this here all the time? What? I was having a sensory overload, like experiencing some form of hallucinogenic drug. The colors, the thoughts racing through my mind, one after another, after another. What was happening to me? Did someone drug me? Did my uncle drug me? I thought. No, he wouldn't do that. Was there mold in the walls? Is our food gone bad? Am I infected by some sort of disease, long dormant left within the house? The thoughts continued to race through my weakening mind. It wasn't long before I saw the house before me, the same mansion where this all started, where the madness began. It was now a more bright and beautiful version of itself, newer. It looked as though it were just painted, a brand new house. Was I seeing the past of how the old decrepit house looked? Or was I seeing the future of how we could make it look? I approached the door to the house and began to hear a muffled sound, like someone yelling within the house. I slowly reached for the knob and opened the door with a loud screech of the door against the floorboards. Inside, it was not like the house. Inside, it was more like a cave. Gray stone walls leading up to stalactite-covered ceilings. There was a cave within the house. From deeper within the cave, I heard the sound again. This time, it was louder and was not muffled by the door. It was the sound of screaming, loud screaming, screams of moans of pain, screams of deep suffering. The screams were all of a familiar voice. It was his voice. It was the prisoner. It was the beast from the book, the tentacled thing, the thing with many arms and eyes. He was here, deep within the cave ahead of me. Though I was terrified, I had to proceed. I was again being drawn forward, but I couldn't fight it this time. I had to continue forward. I turned back to look at the beauty of the world behind me, the world between worlds, the world that existed on all planes, yet none at all. I marveled at its magnificence. Then I turned back toward the darkness of the cave and stepped through the doorway.
Well, if you take anything away from tonight's tale, it's that maybe we should skip sleep for the time being. Maybe I could fate the beasts with aspirations. But if you aspire to drown in more dread, make sure to drop in again next weekend. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.